Hello everyone. So today we're building a chat assistant with openAI API. So this is the chat assistant, just a simple UI. I use Bootstrap for the UI. Now I just want to mention that I expect anybody watching this tutorial have a basic understanding of JavaScript. You understand how asynchronous request work in JavaScript. You know how to make requests using the fetch API or async await or even Ajax. So, because we'll be making requests to the OpenAI API, retrieve data from them, and we're going to output the data in the DOM. We're going to have a text data and we're going to have image data. But we have just one input to send a prompt to OpenAI. So that's why we have this text and image button here. So right now we're in text mode. That's why this text button is highlighted. If I come to image, you see the image button changed to green and the text button changed to blue. So whatever button with this green color is the current mode we are. So I'm going to go back to text mode and I'm just going to enter a prompt. I'm just going to say hello and send. You see this spinner appears and it's going to disappear immediately. The data loads in the DOM. So if I go to image and say smiling baby, it's going to generate the image. So you see the image. And what we are doing, we just have an image. We have two image container and we are putting the URL we got from OpenAI through our JavaScript. So the files are pretty heavy, so that's why it's taking so much time to load. But I hope you understand what we are going to be building. I hope you get the idea of what we are going to be building, and I hope you enjoy this video. So I'm going to see you in Visual Studio Code. Alright guys, so we're going to start typing our HTML for this project. So I have my Bootstrap link and my font awesome script tag because I'll be using font awesome for the icons. Then I have some basic styling here on my head tag. Then I have my Bootstrap CDN and I have a container with class of container. This is where every element is going to be. So I'm just going to, I already have this open up with live server. So I'm just going to share the screen so you can see. I actually want this on the left. Then yeah, so I'm just going to bring in a nav bar with the class of nav bar and row. So I'm going to have a div with the class of column md dash fix and the class of column dash lg 4, and I also want a class of text dash center. And these are all bootstrap class in case you are wondering where these classes are coming from. So I'm going to have an a tag. I'm just going to put the hash symbol here because we are not navigating to anywhere. Then I'm going to have a class of navbar brand. These are all bootstrap class. Navbar dash brand, and inside there I'm going to have an h1. Then I'm just going to say guinea AI. Then I'm going to have an I tag, the class of fas dot fa dash brain dot fa dash lg, and this is a font awesome class. So if I save, let's see what we are going to get here. So you see we have this logo here, guinea AI. So I'm going to come under this div and I'm going to have a container. I'm just going to call it button container. Let me put comment here. So the code will be easy for us to read. So I'm just going to say button container, and inside that button container, I want a div, and I'm going to have a class, and I want column dash lg dash 8 and column medium dash 6. Now what I'm actually doing, I'm just specifying the breakpoints for this div in small and large screen using bootstrap class. So I'm just going to have a ul, and I'm going to give that ul the class of navbar dash nav, and I'm going to make it flex, but I want it to be row, so I'll say flex dash row, and I'm going to justify all the content. I'm going to position all the content in center, so I'm going to do justify dash content dash center. Then inside the ul, I'm going to have an li. I'm just going to put let's just say text button. So inside this li, we are going to have buttons, which will be the two buttons. So li, and it's going to have a class of nav dash item, and we're going to have a button. Let's just do btn dot class of btn dot btn dash primary. I want this to have a primary color of blue, and I'm just going to give it a padding of I'm going to give it a padding horizontally large. I want it to be 5 pixel in large screen, and I want it to be 3 pixel in small screen. Then I want a margin right 3 pixel. So inside this first button, I'm just going to say text and save. So we have our text here. I also want to give it an ID of text dash mode. So I'm just going to copy this, and just going to copy this, and I'm going to call this image button. So we're going to have the same thing. I'm just going to change here to image mode, and I'm going to change the text content to image. Save. So you see we have another button here with image in it. Now I just want to, so we have button container here already. I just want to add some comments. So I'm just going to come here and say navbar. So now that we have our navbar, I want to come under the navbar, and I want to create a div for the result. So I'm just going to say result container, and then I'm going to have a div, the um, class of container, and the class of flex. I want this to be flex. So I'm going to use display flex, dflex for bootstrap classes. Then I'm going to make it flex column. The flex direction, I'm going to change it to column, and I'm going to have text display. Yes, so we're going to have text display, text dash display. Let's just call this here text display. But I also want to give this an ID of um, prompt result. prompt results, my prompt not correct, prompt results dash container. So I'm going to come over here. The text display is going to be very simple. We're just going to have a div, and we're going to give that div a class of I want margin vertically, I want theory, I want padding vertically and horizontally, I want theory, and I want padding bottom 5. Then I'm going to give it an ID of chart display and save. So we're not going to see anything, but this is where we're going to attribute our chart. So I'm just going to come over here and say um, image display, and I'm going to have a div, and that div is going to have a class. I'm going to give it a class of row. I'm going to give it margin. I'm going to give it padding, and we're going to have an ID of image display. And inside that image display, I want two containers for the image, the first container for the first image and the second container for the second image, because if you remember, we have two images. So I'm just going to create another div, and I'm going to give it a class of column dash lg 6. So I want this to be 2 in a row, and I'm going to say mx auto to position it at the middle. Then I'm going to have an ID of image. I'm just going to say img1 dash container. I'm just going to copy this. So, but inside there we want an image tag. We're not going to put anything for the source. We're going to be doing this dynamically with our JavaScript. But I'm going to give it an ID of image one, and we're going to have a class of rounded, because I want round edges. So I'm just going to copy this where we have the image. So copy it, and I'm going to come down and paste. So this is going to be image 2, and this is going to be, what did I do wrong? Image display. I'm just going to copy this. Yeah. So this is going to be image 2, and this is going to be image 2 container, and save. So next, what we want to do, image display. I'm just going to check where the image display ends. So it ends here. So I'm just going to come over here, but I'm going to change this back. I'm going to come over here, then I'm going to create spinner. I'm just going to call this spinner and input container, and I'm going to have a div with the class uh, of container. I want it to be flex, so I'm going to use display flex. Then I want the flex to be column, flex dash column. I'm going to use this. Then I want it to be fixed, so I'm going to set the position to fixed bottom. And if just a way of doing this with Bootstrap, I know if you know about CSS, you know how to do this with CSS. So inside this container, I'm going to have spinner container and input container. So I'm going to create our spinner container first because we have it at the top, if you remember, at the top of the input. So I'm going to say div, and we're going to have a class. I'm just going to give it a class of spinner dash container. I'm going to use the class this time instead of ID. Then I'm going to position it at the middle using MX Auto, and I'm going to say MB margin bottom 2, and I want padding left TV, and to I want it to have a dark background, so I'm going to use BG dark, and text light. I want the text to be light, and I want rounded. So I'm going to save this, but this is what we are going to see here. So inside this spinner container, we are going to have a p tag, and I'm going to give it a class of d dash inline because I want this to be positioned inline. So it's going to be inline, it's going to be in the same line with the spinner. So we're just going to write generating, generating. Then I'm going to have an image tag, and the source I'm just going to say loading dot gif. Save loading dot gif. I save. What's going on? Was supposed to have a spinner here, this spinner here, which I have here. So loading dot gif. This is supposed to show here. Oh, I I have a styling for the spinner here, so I'm just going to give it an ID of spinner and save. So if I save, you see the spinner here. But then I'm going to set the display. I'm just going to say d dash none because we want to hide this, but we'll be changing this class from our JavaScript, and save. So the spinner goes off. So if where the spinner ends right here, so I want to come under here and say input container. Yeah, input container, or let's just say input. Then I'm going to have a div, and I'm going to give it a class of container, and I'm going to give it a class of form dash group, and I'm going to use dflex because we are going to have the input and the button inside this container. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to have an input with the class of form control. Let's just put the class here. I like putting it before the type. So the class of form dash control, and I'm going to give it a class of, I think, form control. That's all we need. I'm just going to give it an ID of prompt, because this is where we'll be entering our prompt for both image and text. So if I save, you see this input here. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to have a button, and I'm going to give it a class of BTN primary, and I'm going to give it margin left 2, then padding horizontally 4, and I'm going to give it an ID of send dash prompt. Then inside I'm going to have an I tag, the class of FAS font awesome, and I want FA slash paper dash plain and dot L dot FA dash LG, meaning I want this to be large, and I'll save. So I'm just going to put, I just want to know where the spinner container ends. So let's just do this. No, not the spinner container, the the container for both the spinner and the input. So it ends here. So I'm just going to put a comment and say spinner and input container end, and I'm just going to change this back to div, and we know here if the result display container end. So I'm just going to save this. So that's all for our HTML. So we are going to move over to write our JavaScript. Okay guys, so before we start writing our JavaScript, I just want us to look at the API documentation for using OpenAI API. So I'm just going to come over to chat, and if the endpoint will be hitting chat completions. So these are the required parameters. So we have model, which is the ChatGPT model we'll be using, ChatGPT model, the GPT model. I don't know why I keep on saying ChatGPT instead of GPT. So we have message is required. The message is going to contain the content and the role who is using it, either a user or an assistant. So we'll be using n, is optional, but we are going to be using it. It simply means the number of chat completions we want when we send a request. For the image, we'll be using 2, and for the text, we'll be using the default, which is 1. We have stop. I'm going to explain this when we start writing our JavaScript. Then max token, we're using max token. Max token simply means the number of words, the number of tokens we want to have on each request. So um, we have maximum of about 2,504. So that's it. You can look more, you can do a lot more with this API. We have audios, but I'm just going to focus on chat and image. So for the image, this is the endpoint we'll be hitting, image generations. So we have the prompt. The prompt is the text description of the image we want. We have n, which is optional, but we are going to put it, so it must be between 1 or 10, meaning you can generate minimum of 1 and maximum of 10 image. Then give the size of the images. The size of generated images must be one of 256 pixel or 512 by 512 pixel, and the response format JSON, and the user string, which is optional. So these are all the requests we'll be including when in our header our request header when making this request. So I'm just going to close this. So this is our HTML we wrote. Then I'm going to bring in my code editor. I'm going to come to JavaScript. So first, what you want to do, you want to put your API key, and you can create an account. Go to your profile, and you see where you can generate your API key from. Now, I'm going to advise you to generate your own API key, not to use another person's API key, because it doesn't make any sense of using another person's API key when you can simply get yours for free. So you just have to sign up with openAI and get your own API key. So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to bring in my API key, and I already have it copied, so I'm just going to paste it here. So after bringing my API key, what do I want to do? I'm going to have a class. Now this class is going to contain the function to fetch text data and image data. So I'm going to call this prompt. I'm going to say class. I'm going to call this prompt. And we're not going to have a constructor. I'm just going to say text prompt here. Text prompt. And I'm going to have a function. I'm going to call that function text prompt. Text prompt. And this is what I was talking about. You need to have basic fundamentals of JavaScript, how to use functions and classes. So inside this text prompt function, we're going to use the fetch API to make a request to that endpoint. So I'm just going to say fetch, and in here I'm going to pass in the endpoint, which is HTTPS, and I'm just going to put down the endpoint API. Going to be API dot openai.com, then slash v1, then the endpoint want to eat chat, and we want completions. So we are making a post request, so we have to specify the request. That's how to specify a post request when using the fetch API. If it's a get request, you don't have to do this. So I'm just going to say method, and the method is going to be post. So we want everything to be capital letter. Post is an object, so we're going to have the header, and inside the header we are going to send an authorization with our API key. So I'm just going to specify the content type, very important, content dash type, and I'm going to set it to application/json, application/json. Then I'm going to have authorization, and these are all in the documentation. I know I did not go over everything about the documentation, but if you understand how API requests work, you'll be able to look at any API, read through their documentation, and know how to make a request to that API. So bearer, and I'm going to insert my API key. That's why I put it in a variable. So I'm going to say API key. Then next, what do we want to do? We want to specify the required parameters, and that will go inside the body, because when sending it, we want to send those parameters along. So body, then we are going to turn this into JSON.stringify, because the data we'll be sending is just an object. So we are going to convert it to a JSON string using JSON.stringify. stringify, this thing of stringify, and what we are going to pass in, we are going to pass in an object of the model. I'm going to pass in an object of the model, and the model is GPT dash 3.5 dash turbo, and I'm going to have message message an array that takes in an object. Remember, I saw it in the documentation, and we have role, and we're just going to use user for this, and then for the content content I'm just going to pass in content. The reason why I'm passing content is because this is going to take a parameter of content. So when we call this function, we are going to pass the content what we want to send. So there's no need of doing content and content when the words are the same. You can simply do just content. So we're sending the content. Next, we are going to do max token, max underscore token, and these are from the OpenAI documentation. So I want 248. I think that's the maximum, and want n, which is the number of chat completions we want the API to return. So I want one because I just want one response for each prompt when generating text data. Then stop. Now this stop, what this simply means is that the token we are going to pass in here, if um, whatever result the API is going to return, if it hits this um, if it has this question mark icon, it's going to stop at there. So and I'm going to give you an example of this when we start testing it. So this is just our text prompt. So I'm going to create the image prompt. So text prompt ends here. So I'm going to come over here and say image prompt. And I'm going to say image prompt prompt, and this is going to be a function, and it's going to take a prompt, and this is going to be kind of similar with what we did. So I just want to copy this fetch and here. I'm going to copy it, paste, but I'm going to change the endpoint from chat to images. Then we want generations. Remember, we saw it at the API documentation. So we're making a post request with our header. We have the model. We don't need to specify the model um, for image request. So I'm just going to get rid of this model. But we are going to specify the message, and message, no, we don't need message because this is going to return an image. So I'm just going to take this off. What we just need is the prompt. So we are just going to send the prompt and the number of chat completions. We are not hitting any token because this is an image. I'm going to get rid of this. Then the chat completions, which is the n integer, I'm going to set this to 2. I'm going to get rid of this max token, and we are sending prompt. So the prompt that is passed in here when we call this function, that's what we are going to send, and it's just what commanded. So it's just what we are going to get from this input. We are going to pass in the value of this input here when we click this button. So here's our text prompt. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to call just to test this out. So I'm just going to say, let's just say class prompt. We have to initialize it to use, sorry, not class. I'm not going to create a variable const. I'm going to call this prompt, and I'm going to initialize my prompt constructor. So prompt, um, then yeah, I want to call prompt dot text prompt. Then I'm going to pass in hello and save. So we're not going to get anything because we are just sending a request. We have to attribute the data. So we're going to use the dot then syntax. So I'm going to come over here and use dot then. That's why I said you have to understand how a synchronous request work with JavaScript. And I'm going to pass in the response, and I'm going to return response.json because it's going to come as a JSON file. Then I'm going to use another dot then to get the data. I'm going to say data, and I'm just going to log the data for now. I'm just going to use console.log. Then we're going to log data, and I'm just going to copy this. Then we're going to do the same for the image and save. So I just want to change this to image prompt. Yeah, image prompt, and I want to pass in smiling baby and save. So if I open my console, I'm just going to reload this. Why is this not working? We're logging the data in our console. Or let's just go to our network tab, and we can check. You can also check the response from there. So, oh, sorry, I I forgot to link our script tag. We have to bring in our script tag. So script source, then script dot js, and save. And now that should work. So if I come to the console, we should see the request when the browser finish loading. We have an error, so let's see what the error. Messages if a required property. So where are we getting that error from? Um, oh, this should be messages, not message. So this is supposed to be messages. So you want to make sure you add STT their their API documentation. But you see, we have the images. So this is the URL for. If I should open this up, I'm just going to copy this. Or let's just leave it. But what we are going to do, we are going to set this URL to the image we have in our HTML, and that's how we're going to display the image. So if I save this now, so you see for the chat, we have choices. You see we have the ID, we have the object, chat completion, the model. But what we need is this choices. So the choices we have message. Inside the message we have the role. Their role is their role is assistant while we are the users. Then look at the content. So hello, how can I assist you today? So we want the role and the content. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here, and instead of console.logging data, I'm just going to get rid of this console.log data. Then, or let's just leave that. Let's just leave the, let's just leave it in our console for now. But I'm going to say data dot. So we want choices dot choices. This is just what we have here. Data dot choices. Then we want to take the index of 0, which we have here in our choices. Then we want dot message. Then we want the content. That's what we want, and we are going to do the same for our image, but let's just console.log the data for now. So let's save, and it's going to make another request, and you see we get hello, how can I assist you today? So what we want to do next, we want to be able to output the data the to the user. We want to put the data into the DOM. So we are going to do that next. Okay guys, so before we output the data, we want to be able to distinguish between text mode and image mode, because we'll be sending either the image request or the text request based on the mode we are. So to do that, what I want to do, I'm going to create a function for text mode and a function for image mode. But before I do that, I'm just going to get rid of this. Then I'm going to create a function for all my event listeners. So I'm going to say function, and I'm going to call this load all event listeners. Then I'm just going to call this below. Just going to call this below. Then I also want to create a function to select um, documents from to select my elements from the DOM. So I'm just going to say function, and I'm going to call this selector, and I'm going to pass in a parameter of selector. You can call this class or ID like I do before, but I just want to call this selector because it can be either a class or an ID. So I'm just calling this selector. Then I want to return from this function document dot query selector, and I want to pass in the selector. So now what we are going to do, let's go over to create our image mode and text mode. But to do that, we need to add an event listener on the image button and the text button. So we're going to come inside our event listener, and we're going to select the text button first. So I'm going to say text button, and I'm going to use the class of selector, and it has an ID of text mode. So I'm going to say text dash mode, and what do we want to do? So I'm going to say dot add event listener, dot event add event listener, and we want to listen for a click event. And when that click event fires off, we are just going to I'm just going to use an arrow function in here because we're not going to do much inside this um, text. Or yeah, I'm just going to use an arrow function. Or what we can do, we can just simply, instead of using an arrow function, let's just call text mode. Yeah, there's no sense in using an arrow function when we can just simply call text mode. Just say text mode. Then I'm going to come under my event listener. Then I'm going to create the text mode. So what do we want to do for our text mode? We want to um, change this primary color here to green. So that's how we know if we're in text mode or we're in image mode. So I'm going to say function text mode, and I'm going to say selector. So what I want to do, I want to display only the text container when we are in text mode. Remember, we have two containers, one for text, one for the chat, what the response we are going to get back from OpenAI, and one for the response image. So I'm going to say selector, selector, and I'm going to select the image display. I'm just going to say image dash display. Then I want to add a class list. I'm going to use class list dot add. Then I'm going to add a class of d dash none. Then I'm going to add false. Now the reason why I'm adding this class of false is because we are going to use this to know if we are in text mode or image mode when we want to send our request. So I'm going to select the chat display. I'm going to take the chat display, chat dash display, that's the ID we give to it. Then what I want to do, I want to remove d dash none. So I'm going to remove d dash none, because for the text, for the image mode, we are going to be adding d dash none to it. So we want to remove it anytime we're in text mode. We want to display the chat container, but anytime we're in image mode, we want to hide the chat container and display the image container. So after doing that, I'm going to set a class of active. I want to be able to show the green color so that we know if we're in text mode or image mode. So I'm just going to say set active state. I'm just putting this comment so you can make reference to it later. So set active state. I'm just going to call a function called active. I'm just going to call this active state. Then inside that function, I'm going to pass in selector, and I'm going to select uh, text mode button. So text mode. Then also I'm going to select. I'm just going to copy this and paste it. Then I'm going to change this to image mode. So we're going to come here and create that function. So, but before that, let me just put a comment here and say selector. Learning how to comment your code is a good practice. You must learn how to comment your code. It enhances readability. So it's something you want to practice. So I'm just going to call this function, yeah, what do I call it? Active state. So I'm going to say active state. Yeah, let's just say active state. Active state. Then I'm just going to say function active state. Then we want um, state 1 and state 2. So state 1 can either be um, image mode, or it can either be text mode. So I'm just going to say state 2. Now what do we want to do? We want to take this state 1. So remember, we are passing in the selector as an argument here. We're passing the buttons as an argument here. So what do we want to do? We'll be flipping this. So we'll flip this for image. If we want the image to be active, we are going to flip this. The image mode is going to come first before the text mode. So I'm going to say state 1 dot, and I'm going to take the class list dot replace. So what replace is going to do is going to replace a class we have in our HTML document with the one we are going to pass in right now. So I want to replace btn dash primary with btn dash info, and this is just bootstrap class. Then I'm just going to copy this, then change this to state 2. And what do we want to do this time? We want to replace btn info to btn primary. So if there is btn info in meaning if image mode is activated, we want to remove it and set it to set the active class to text mode when we click the text. So I'm going to replace btn info with btn primary. So we are just going to be switching this. So if I save, we're not going to see anything until we click. So if I click, you see we have the class, and you notice the browser expands because we just display the chat container. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this function, but I'm just going to put above here and say text mode, and I'm just going to copy everything, going to come down here and change this to image mode. Now what do you want to do for image mode? We are doing the same thing. Oh, I don't want to add force for text mode, because I want it to when the DOM load, I'm going to create an event that's going to lift in for the DOM load, and when the DOM load, I'm going to call this text mode function, because I want it to be set to text mode by default. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to add force for this. What did I just do? Oh yeah, I want to leave the force. I thought this was chat display. I want to leave it for the image, but over here I want to remove it when we're in image mode. Or we are just going to leave it because we are going to use it to check if we're in image mode. So we are just going to change this to remove. D dash none. We're going to remove D dash none, and we are going to remove force also. But we want to add now, so we want to hide the chat display when we are in image mode, and I'm going to change this to image mode, and I want to change this to, I'm just going to switch this, like I said, image mode, and I'm going to switch this to text mode and save. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over to our event listing now and copy this. So I'm going to change this to image mode, then I'm going to change this to image mode also and change this to image button and save. Then I'm just going to put in the dump content for the event. So I'm just going to say document dot add event listener, and we're going to listen from when our HTML loads into the DOM, and we are going to call text mode. Text mode. So if I save, you are going to see by default text mode is already activated. But if I click, we're having an error. Says cannot read properties of add at image mode. So let's go to image mode. Oh, this should be class list. So I want to say class list dot class list. So let's bring this down. I'm still getting another error. Selector chat display dot class list dot add. Yeah, so we're no longer having that error. So if I click image, why are we still getting that? Cannot read class of. Did we do anything wrong? We're selecting chat display. Let's check here. Oh, we have text mode, image mode. Um, selector. Let's just make this bigger to see. Chat display dot class list dot add. Um, just trying to figure out what we are doing wrong. Image button, image mode, and we have a click event, and we are calling image mode. Um, let us try this again. Why do we keep getting this error? Uh, chat. Don't know why we're still getting this error. I selected everything correctly. Oh, here should be class list. Class list dot remove and save. God, so that's where we're getting the error from. So you see, if I click now, my text mode, my image mode. So now that we have been able to switch mode, what do we want to do next? We want to be able to get the input based on the want to get this value, this input value when we click this button. So I'm going to go to my event listener and I'm going to come over here. And that button has an ID of send prompt. So I'm going to say selector, and I'm going to pass in the ID of send prompt, send dash prompt dot add event listener. I'm going to listen for a click. I'm going to listen for a click. Then I'm going to call a function called send prompt. So what do we want to do in this function? We want to be able to check if we're in image mode or text mode. Then we are going to send the prompt based on that mode. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come above this text mode. Then I'm going to say send prompt, send prompt. So I'm going to say function send prompt, and let's just look if we send prompt, and I'm going to do an if statement here, and I'm just going to say send prompt prompt based on mode. So we are going to check for the mode and send prompt, and we are going to do this. We are going to look at that class of force, but we also want this input to have something. So if there's something inside input, we want to send prompt. So I'm going to say if, then we're going to select the image display, because that's what has the class of force we'll be using to check. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to say if selector, I'm going to pass in the image display to select it, image display dot class list, and we're going to use a method called contains to check contains false. So if it contains false, then we will know that we are in text mode. So we also want to check the if the input has a value. So we're going to say and if selector, then we're going to get that with the id of prompt. That's what we gave it when writing the HTML prompt. And what do we want to do? We want to check the value. So we want to check if it's not equal to nothing. So if it's not equal to nothing, what do we want to do? We want to display first. We want to display the text here, which means the prompt we just entered. We want to display it. So I'm just going to call a function called display user prompt, which we are going to create later. So I'm just going to say display user prompt, and I'm going to pass in. I'm just going to copy this selector prompt.value. I'm going to copy it because that's going to be our prompt. And yes, then I want to initialize. I'm just going to add some comments here. So I'm going to say display user prompt, which is the prompt you gave to openAI. So then I'm going to say init. We are going to initialize the prompt constructor, init prompt class. So I'm going to say const prompt, and I'm going to set it to new prompt. Then we are going to send the prompt We're going to send prompt. And how are we going to send the prompt? We are going to call prompt dot text. Remember, we have a function called text prompt inside the text and the prompt constructor. So I'm just going to pass in the value, the prompt value as the content. It has a parameter of content. So I'm passing the prompt value as the prompt input value as an argument here. So yeah, I think that's all for. We also want to display the spinner. Yeah, so we want to display the spinner. So I'm just going to say display spinner, display spinner. So I'm going to get that with selector. Then I'm going to pass in dot. Remember, it's a class spinner dash container, and we want to say dot class lift dot remove. We want to remove the class of d dash none and save. And we also want to, I'm just going to, before that, I'm going to just say clear input feed. So we are going to do that by just setting the value to nothing and save. So I also want to, yeah, but I'm just going to put this in a function. I want this to be a function on its own. So I'm going to come below here and I'm going to say function. I'm going to call this user text prompt. Then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy everything I have inside here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it. No, cut. I'm going to cut it. Paste it here. Then I'm going to call user text prompt here. So we're going to do an else. And what do we want to do else? If it's not text mode, then um, we want to call the image mode, but this is going to be an else if. So I'm just going to say else if, then I'm going to copy this because we want to make sure that input.value is not equals to nothing. Okay, so if it's equals to nothing, we don't want to do anything. So I didn't even think about that. We are supposed to like add a validation that says um, enter a prompt or something. I didn't do that, but you can do that. I didn't think about that when I was building this project. So you want to check if this time I want to say if selector image display classes, if it does not, so we want to check if it does not contain false, then we want to call a function. We're just going to call that function user image prompt, and we're just going to do similar to what we did for this. So I'm just going to come below here. Let's just put let's just say user text prompt, and we're going to have user image prompt. So I'm going to say function user image prompt, and we're just going to initialize let's just copy what we have here. We're just going to copy what we have here, copy this, paste it, but This time, what do you want to do? Instead of calling text prompt, you want to call image prompt. You want to call image prompt, and yeah, you want to call image prompt. You want to set the value to nothing. You want to display the spinner. Yeah. So, but if I do that, we are not going to have anything here. So, what I want to do is that I want to create this um, display user prompt function we have here. We have display user prompt function because that's going to output what we type here. So we're going to have what we type and we're going to have the response. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to say display user prompt, and we are going to create the function. So I'm going to say function display user prompt, and we are going to I'm going to create it. So we're just going to write some HTML here. So I'm just going to say um, create display, create prompt display. Yeah, let me just create prompt display, and I'm going to say const. I'm going to call this user prompt display. I'm just trying to be descriptive as possible. So we are going to have a div. We're going to have a div, and yeah, we're going to have a div, and that div is going to have and we're going to have a class of d dash flex. We're going to have mb theory, margin bottom theory, and inside that div we're going to have an I tag. So I'm going to say uh if I just want to type this out from scratch. If you want to copy it later, when if you want to follow exactly what I did, or you just want to get the idea to do whatever you want. So I'm going to have a class, and I'm going to give it a class of fa dash user, and I'm going to have p dash theory. I'm going to have and rounded circle because I want this to be circle. To do that in CSS, you can use border radius 50%. So I'm going to set the background color to blue, which is BG primary. I want the text to be light, so I'm going to say text light. Then I want margin right TV. Then I want to align it to the center vertically. So I'm going to say align dash self dash start. Okay, sorry, I want to align it to the start. So that's it for the I tag. So I'm going to have another div, and that div is going to take in our text. So remember we passed in a parameter here, so I'm just going to call this parameter value. So what we are going to do here, we're going to have a p tag, or we're not going to have a p tag. We can have a p tag, but I think I'm just going to leave it like that. So I'm just going to use dollar symbol, and I'm going to pass in the value here, value. Then I also want to give this a class. I want to give it a class of container, and I want padding, two pins there. I want the text color to be light, BG light, LIGHT. Then I want it to be rounded. I want rounded edges to save. So we're just going to try this out. Okay, before we do that, we need to attribute this to the DOM. So I'm not going to say insert to the DOM, insert rather, we need to insert into the DOM, insert uh, into DOM. Then I'm just going to take the chart container, the chart display. So I'm just going to say selector chart dash display dot inner html. Yeah, I want the inner html, and this should be capital letter inner html, and we want to append. What do we want to append? We want to append this user display prompt. So I'm just going to copy this and paste this. So if I save, if I should come over here and say hello, let's just wait for this to reload. If I say hello, it's going to appear here. You see the generating icon, but we are not getting the response because we're supposed to be getting the icon. So something is wrong. There's supposed to be an icon here. There's supposed to be an icon here. So let's just reload and check why we're not getting the icon. So SAS. Oh, there's supposed to be. Let's just check if we're doing this right. There's supposed to be double quote here. So if I save this now and say, let's just wait for it to reload and say hello. So you see, we get the user icon here. So the next thing we want to do, we want to display this. We want to display. We want to get the prompt. We want to display the prompt also. So to do that, we are going to create some functions. One for the text prompt and one for the user prompt. Not user prompt, one for the text prompt and one for the image prompt. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here above our event listing and yeah, I'm just going to get rid of this. So right under the image prompt, I'm going to say, I'm just going to put a comment here, say text response, to text response, and I'm going to say function display. I'm going to call it display text prompt. I'm going to call it display text prompt. And what do we want to do? So whenever we get because we are going to call this function inside this dot then. Yeah, we're going to call this function inside the dot then we're going to pass in this data dot show the message, the content we are getting from the API. So I'm just going to pass in data here. So the first thing we want to do immediately we fetch the data, we want to remove the spinner. So I'm just going to say remove spinner, and I'm going to say selector. You can decide to put all this in a variable globally, then just take the variable name, but I prefer to do this inside. So I'm just going to say spinner dash container. Then we're going to say dot class list dot add d dash none. We want to hide it. Then next, what do we want to do? We want to check if there is an error. if there is an error, so I'm just going to say if data dot error, because we also have error. If there's an error, it's going to return an error. So if data dot error, want to, let's just console dot log data dot error dot message, and I'm going to show you where I got this from. So else, if there's no error, then want to create the um the prompt, want to create the prompt element and display it to the users. So I'm going to say, create AI response container, container, and I'm going to say const. I'm going to call this AI response, AI response container, and I'm going to say document dot create element, and this should be a div. So we're going to create a div, and what do you want to do next? I'm going to set the response class name. So I'm going to set AI response response class name. I'm going to set the class name. I'm going to say AI response dot class name, and I'm going to give it a class of dflex, dflex, and mbt. So next, I want to create an icon, because I want to show an icon to know that that response is um, from OpenAI. So I'm going to say create AI icon, and we're just going to use this brain icon here. So I'm going to say const icon, and we are going to set that to document dot create element, and we're going to create an I tag, and I'm going to set AI icon class. I'm just trying to comment this so that you'll be able to make reference to it later and understand it. So I'm going to say icon dot class name. What's the class name? And I'm going to set this to fa dash brain, yeah, fa dash brain, and I want padding. I want it to be rounded circle. You can decide to just write this as plain HTML, then do it the way I did this one. But I just decided to create this from scratch. I just want to show you how to do this differently. So I want rounded, it should be dash circle, rounded dash circle, and I want bg primary, and I want text right, I want text dash right, I want margin right, and I want to align self dash center and save. So next, what do you want to do? You want to create the output. So I'm just going to say create AI, create AI response output. We want to create the output. Um, the output is going to be it's also going to be a div. So I'm not going to copy this. I'm not going to copy this, paste it here, but I'm going to change this to AI response output. So output, AI response output. Then what I want to do, I want to set the class name. So I'm going to say set response AI response output. And I want to set this to, so I'm going to say AI response output dot class name. The class name, I'm going to set this to be equal to um, container. It's going to be a container. So we are going to have a container, and we are going to have padding. I want the background color to be primary. Uh, I want text light, and I want it to be rounded. To save, I'm not going to see anything. We are going to try this out. So now I want to insert everything into the DOM. So I'm going to say insert insert into DOM, and I'm going to say AI rest AI container dot append child. Want to append child, and want to append the icon, and I'm not going to copy this twice. Then we also want to append AI response AI response output AI response output. Then I want to set AI response output dot inner HTML to be the data. So AI AI response output dot inner HTML equal to data. So I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to copy it, or I'm just going to come over here. Instead of console.logging this, I'm just going to call this display text prompt function. So I'm going to say display display text prompt prompt. Yeah, then I'm going to pass in this data to save. So if I come here and say, if I come here and say hello, we are going to see what we asked, and we are going to see the response. So if I say hello, I'm going to click generate. We are getting an error. Say I is not defined in script JS 57, line 57. Oh, this should be a string. To save, and let's just try this out again and say hello, generate. Mm, let's just wait for it to generate, and let's see what we get as response. We are not getting anything. Or okay, so let's set the data to before we had put it into the DOM. So let's try that out again. We have an error. Say API connection error closed. Failed to fetch text prompts. I'm just going to check my data connection to see if it's on. Yeah, it's connected. So why are we getting this error? Text prompt. Connection closed. Let's just refresh and try this again. So if I say hello, this time we didn't get an error, but we are not getting it. So what could be the problem? Let's just check our network tab. Let's go over to our network tab and if, let's check completions. And you see, I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. So you see, we are getting the response. We are getting the response. Say hi there, how can I assist you? But we are not getting it in the DOM. So we are not getting it in the DOM. So let's make sure we are selecting everything right. Oh, let's append the data. Let's try this one more time. Yes, we want to append data because we keep on getting more data. So let's do that. Let's append it. And we are still not getting it. So why are we not getting this? Why are we not getting this? I'm supposed to be getting this. AI response output. We are appending it to this container here. Also, we also want to insert this AI response container into the DOM. So I'm just going to come over here and say chat display selector. Remember selector dot chat selector is a function. So it's going to take chat dash display dot append. I'm going to append child and I'm going to append this AI response container. So if I should save and let's try that now, we are going to get it. So if I say hello, generating, and see we get it. So next thing I want to do, I want to be able to get that typing effect. You saw the typing effect when I showed you um how this chat assistant was going to work. So I want to get that typing effect now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and create a function. I'm just going to call it display display text. I'm just going to say display text, and it's going to take in data. It's going to take the data as an argument, and it's going to take output as an argument. So I'm going to say, let's just say typing typing effect function, and here let's just copy this. I'm just going to say typing effect itself. So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say type interval because I'm going to use the set interval for this. I'm going to say type interval, and I'm going to set this to set interval, and set interval is going to take a callback. It's going to take a callback, and what we are going to have inside that callback, we're going to say output dot inner html and we are going to set it to the data, and we're going to have a variable called we're going to say let I equals to 0. So we want to increment I, and we want to get the character of the, remember this data here is a string. This is what we are going to pass in here when we call this function. It's a string, so we can get the character using char@, method, the particular index. So I'm going to say dot char@, then I'm going to pass in I. Then what we are going to do, we are going to increment I. Then I'm going to do an if statement to stop it if we get to the last index. So I'm going to say less than if I is not less than, if I is greater or equal to data dot length. I'm going to use the length property. Then we want to clear interval, and we are going to pass in that type interval. Then we are going to set I equals to 0 and save. And I want this to happen within 50 milliseconds. So I'm just going to pass in 50 there and save. Then I'm going to copy this function. I'm going to copy it. Then I'm just going to put this down here. Then we're going to pass data. Then the output is going to be AI response.output. I'm going to copy it, paste it here. Then I'm going to get rid of this and save. So let's try it again. Let's say hello. Let's say hello. Let's say hello. Generating. You see, start writing hello. How may I assist today? So that's all for the text part. So we're going to go over to the chat, um, the image, um, the image prompt now. So far we've been able to display our text, but we also want to be able to display the image. So I'm going to create a function right now to handle that. So I'm going to say image image response image response, and I'm going to call a function and I'm going to say display image response. And this is not going to be like the text. We're not going to do document.create. We're just going to first remove the spinner. So remove the spinner, remove spinner. I'm just going to uh, copy this. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. And we're going to check if data dot error, just like we did for the image. And we're going to console.log. I'm going to console.log data dot error dot message. Later, we're going to attribute this to the DOM in case there's an error. The users can know if there's an error to increase uh, our UI. So if if there's an error, just console.log that error. Else, what do you want to do? This should be calibrated. So what do you want to do? We want to take the image1 container. Remember we have container for image1 and image2. So I'm going to say image1. I'm going to pass in it has an ID of image1 dash container dot set attribute. No, we don't want the container, we want the image itself. So it has an ID of image1. I'm sure about that. So I'm going to use the set attribute property, and we want to set the source attribute to source, and we want to set it to data dot data 0. Then want to add dot url at the ending, because that's what, remember when we console.log the response we got from the image. So that's what is going to return. That's what data is going to return. So I'm basically getting it from the response. So I'm just going to copy this again, and we are going to do same for the second image. So this should be image two, and I'm going to set this to 1 and save. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this display response image here. So here where we have our set of console.logging data, I'm going to say display image response, and I'm going to pass in data and save. So if I come over here, come to image and say smiling baby. So now we can actually see the smiling baby. Let's see if it's going to work perfectly or we're going to get an error. We have an error. Data is not defined. So what's going on? We're passing the data here. Let's check if we have to pass in data here. So let's try that again. Let's wait for it to load, and let's try it out again and say hello. Oh, we're in text. So the text works. Let's go to image now, and let's say smiling baby. We're still getting an error. Cannot read properties of set attributes. Cannot read properties of set attributes. So we're having, oh, this should be 2. This should be 2. So that's why we are getting an error. This should be 2. Let's try that again. So I'm just going to say smiling baby. Let's try it out. And yeah, it's going to load right now. So you see it's loading. Let's just wait for it to load. I know is a long video, really a very long video. It's going up to 2 hours now. But you see the image is loading. I have a pretty slow network now, so I'm just going to refresh this. Then I just want to create this error function, this display error. I want to display the error, so I want to create a function called display error to catch the error. So I'm going to come over here and say display display error, and I'm just going to say function, and I'm going to say display errors, and I'm going to pass in data, and I'm going to do const div, going to create an element, document dot create element, and we are going to create a div. Then we are going to set the class name. So I'm just going to say div dot class name, and we are going to set this to alert. This is just a bootstrap component. Alert danger, and we're going to say text dash center. So I'm going to do div dot append child. I'm going to append child, and I'm going to say document dot create. We're going to create a text node. Document dot create text node, and we're going to pass in that data. Then we want to insert it into the DOM. So I'm going to say selector dot main container. So I want to insert it before something. So to do insert before, you're going to collect the parent container and the container which you want to insert before. So I'm going to say dot insert before, and I'm going to say div. I want to insert the div, then I want to insert it before selector, and I'm going to take I want to insert it before the prompt result container. So prompt, remember we have a prompt result container where we have our text response and our image response. Prompt result dash container. Then I'm just going to remove this after 4 seconds. So I'm going to say set timeout, and I'm going to take a callback, and I'm going to do div dot remove. Then I'm going to say after 4,000 milliseconds, which is 4 seconds. So I'm just going to take this function. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to call it here, but I want data dot error dot message as an argument. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to come over here and paste this too. So let's try if this works. So let's wait for it to reload. So what we want to do, I'm going to come to image and I'm going to enter a prompt which the API does not support, their policy does not support. So I'm going to say um, baby Elon Musk, and let's send this. You see, your request was rejected, so we get the error. So if there's any error, we're going to get it at the top here. So I also want to catch any error we get from our fetching this. So I'm going to say from our request. So I'm going to say dot catch. I'm going to use the catch method and I'm going to say error, and we're going to return um, display error. With display errors, let's check what what did I call that function again? Display errors. Display errors. Okay, so I'm going to say display errors and I'm going to pass in error as the data. So I'm just going to copy this line of code and I'm going to attach it to this. So if we get an error, so I'm just going to do something that is going to um, give an error. So I'm going to set this n, or what can I do to produce an error? So um, let's just remove this. Um, let's get rid of this role, or let's change the endpoint here and save. So if I come over to text, or in text by default, if I say hello, type error failed to fetch, so we get the error there. So I'm just going to reload this and I'm just going to get rid of this. So I think that's all for this project. So test let's test it and see if everything is working. So if I say hello, um page data is generating, let's wait for it to generate. Failed to fetch. So I just want to make sure I save this. Why are we getting failed to fetch? So let's just try this one more time again. The error is supposed to work now. Or did we temper any other thing? Let me check if I tempered any other thing. Yeah, so it's working. So I want to ask a question. So I'm just going to ask, what if a function, what is a function? If I ask what is a function, it's going to generate the response and output it back to me. You see, it's writing the function into a block of code. And I think this is really cool. This is very cool. This is one thing I liked about this project. This text effect, I loved it so much. So now I actually want to explain what this stop token means. So I'm going to say write write an if statement if statement with ternary. So if I click, because we are going to run it to question mark using the ternary, you see it's going to stop when it gets to the question mark. Not in Python, not in Python. So we need to specify it. But we don't have leverage to stop the input to stop it. So I'm just going to click this and paste it here again, and I'm going to say in JavaScript. So we want it in JavaScript. So you see, because after this five, internally was supposed to have question mark here. So once it runs into that question mark, it stops. So if you can think of another token that you can put here, maybe like I don't know, back tick or exclamation, any other thing that will be hard for to run into when you fetch data. So it gives you leverage to fetch to get more words. So yeah, so that's what that means. Let's try out the image one more time. So let's say crying baby. Let's do crying baby. Let's wait. It's going to fetch. It's taking a little bit, taking a little while to load. So let's just wait for it to load. Ah, this baby is very ugly. All right, guys. Let's just check. So if you check this on mobile, you can see it's responsive. So this has been a very long video, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned something from this. If you learned something from this, leave a like. If you don't like the video, leave a dislike. Leave a comment below and tell me why you don't like it. So I'm going to improve on my videos. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to see you next time in another video.